Biggest matchup from NFL Sunday probably was Eagles Ravens. And if you're a Ravens fan, please look away. This one did not go their way. 24-19 Eagles. And of course, the biggest story in this one probably is the fact that Justin Tucker had his worst game of the season, man. He's not having a great season overall, but this one was especially bad. Missed an extra point and missed two field goals, did make two others. And the Ravens, for the most part, pretty much did nothing in the second half until the very end of the game. Very unRaven like, and now they're once again another game behind the Steelers.
Yeah, this is crazy. I would not have expected. I mean, obviously, I picked the Ravens to win, but I said this could easily go the other way. But the way this game went just feels like it feels like nothing really happened. I said this about
Yeah,
one of the college games, but it just feels like they were just kind of like out there messing around. Nothing was really going on for either team, and then finally the Eagles were like, "All right, hold on, we got this." And then the Ravens, they punched a touchdown right at the end of the game. But this game, realistically, was like 24-12. So it just doesn't really make sense. But look at it on paper here for a second. We'll start with the Eagles, the winning team here. Jalen Hurts gets 118 yards in the air on 11 for 9 passing, throws a touchdown, does not throw any picks, and then on the ground, he gets 29 yards and a touchdown as well. Saquon Barkley leads them on the ground with 23 carries for 107 yards and a touchdown in the battle of potential running back MVPs here. A.J. Brown leads the Eagles in the air with 66 yards, but Dallas Goedert gets the one air touchdown on 35 yards. And then Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts both fumble, but both recover their fumble, so it doesn't really matter, to anything. And also the Ravens will do the exact same thing. Both these teams just kept fumbling and then recovering it themselves. So a lot of fumbles in the game, a lot of fumbles on the stat sheet. No fumbles recovered for the defenses. Just a lot of messing around. For the Ravens, it's a little weird. Lamar Jackson, 237 yards, 2-0 touchdown and interception ratio, pretty good. The last one does come, in the dying minutes of the game, though. It doesn't mean a whole lot. He's 23 for 36. His completion percentage, he gets sacked 3 times. His second on the team with way less carries, so 8 carries for 79 yards, second rushing. Derrick Henry definitely the Eagles had a game plan for him. 19 carries, 82 yards, not able to find the end zone. Lamar Jackson also did have a 39-yard run though to boost up his numbers. Zay Flowers does pretty well ish. 7 targets and 3 receptions is not amazing, but on those 3 receptions he got 74 yards. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely would be the 2 to score the touchdowns though, and Andrews had 67 yards and Likely had 38 yards. And then as Terrence mentioned, well here I'll talk about the Ravens fumbles for a second. Lamar Jackson fumbles twice. Tylan Wallace fumbles once. Lamar Jackson has a fumble recovery. Tylan Wallace has a fumble recovery, and Ronnie Stanley has a fumble recovery. So all 3 of them are the same thing on both offenses here, as I said a few seconds ago. Just a lot of fumbling around for no gain for the team. Other than it does hurt your own offense when you fumble and have to recover it. Likely you're going to move back, which they did. Justin Tucker, man, I think probably last year, maybe even 2 years ago. I think for sure, I probably said word for word, like, this guy's the GOAT. This guy's the best kicker of all time. And I think I've even said before, like, all the Ravens know that all they have to do in some of these games is get into, a 50 to 60 yard field goal range, and Tucker will put 3 on the board, and you can think about your next drive. Not anymore. We've called Justin Tucker potentially washed a few times throughout the season, but man, is he really starting to add up. In this game, he goes 2 for 4 on his field goal attempts, which is, that's 6 points off the board right there. And then 1 for 2 on his extra point attempts. That's another point off the board. So he scored 7 points. He leaves 7 points to be desired. And I'll say all I want about the Baltimore touchdown at the end of the game being a garbage time touchdown. But if this game goes exactly the way it goes with everything else happening, if he makes those kicks, like, you got this game. You got the extra point. That puts you at 20. You got 2 field goals. That puts you at 26, 24. Ravens walk out 9-4 instead of 8-5. And sometimes, Terrence and I have said this, you can't just chalk it up to like, oh, well, if they hit this field goal here, if they didn't, turn it over here at the end zone, maybe this goes this way. But this one just does feel, and some of the other Ravens losses feel like Tucker is just a few made field goals away from swaying the momentum in the right direction, keeping the Ravens maybe a little more optimistic about their game. And I've spoken, about momentum before and not been the biggest momentum believer. But I think, honestly, when you got a guy like Justin Tucker, who's as, fabled as he is, and then he starts missing all these kicks, I think the Ravens kind of start to be like, dang, we got all the way down. It's 12 to 14. If we can just hit a kick here, then we can make it 15-14, and then we can build from there. And then you miss, and if we can, then we do it again. If we can just hit a kick here, it'll be 15-14, and then you miss, and you miss the extra point earlier on, and it just kind of feels like, man, like that might actually be pretty bad for morale. I mean, I'm sure that's not great for Justin Tucker's morale. I'm sure it's not great as the Ravens to know, like, okay, this is a tough Eagles defense that we could possibly stall out against, but at least if we stall out in field goal range, we'll take 3. And with the way this game's going, maybe 3 can be enough. Start to think maybe in this game that 3 ain't enough, and 3 ain't coming because your kicker can't hit it. So I hate to kind of like dogpile Justin Tucker here and tear a man down, but it is really tough to watch a guy like this kind of fade away this season. I don't know if he'll play next season. If he does, I hope he does something to repair his legacy here. This isn't destroying all the stuff that Justin Tucker has done. He's still one of the greatest kickers in NFL history. But this is really bad, and there are some moments this season where I think these games can be chalked up to somewhat on Justin Tucker. There's other things that go wrong for the Ravens in this game. There's things they could do better on defense. I can't put the loss squarely on any one man's shoulders in an NFL game. It doesn't work that way. But this one, 7 missing points from Justin Tucker does kind of feel like, we almost had this one. And it's been that way. I can't remember the exact number, but in the Ravens' 5 losses, their point differential, the points that they've not scored, equal up to the amount of points from Justin Tucker's missed kicks in those games. So just a little tough. Doesn't work, as a one-to-one comparison. Like, obviously, in this one, he's missing 7 points. The Ravens lost by, 7 would have put them over to win. So it doesn't match up evenly. But it's an interesting thing to think about that, a guy like Justin Tucker on a team like the Baltimore Ravens, who have been such a high-octane offense because of the way they're able to get field goals or touchdowns at any time, once he starts to slip a little bit, they got a little bit of an issue on their hand. And Harbaugh did say at the end of the game, like, I think you're crazy to say that we would move on from Tucker next season. So only way Tucker doesn't play as a Raven next year is he retires. I'm not entirely sure he wants to do that.
Yeah, I feel like at this point it's kind of just mental. I mean, obviously Tucker's still incredibly talented as a kicker. I mean, like you mentioned, he was, up until a couple weeks ago, the most accurate kicker ever. So yeah, I think it is just kind of a mental thing at this point. Not that we know anything about kicking, but that's what it's got to be. Like you don't just fall off the way that he did, and like that. And even a couple years ago, like 2022, he made about as many kicks as he ever had, but was a little bit down from 21 where he was at 95% field goal. 2019 he was at 96, so like 16 he's at 97, so he's had much better years. I think this one is just such a big drop off of like 10 kicks now. Like that's why it's so jarring and it's just consistent. So I mean they've played like what? They played 13 games now and he's missed 10 kicks. I mean it's really close to 1 per game at this point. So yeah, it's just that he's just not that automatic anymore, and it's not even like the distance. Like obviously he's not missing 20-yard field goals, but there's still they're field goals that we kind of expect him to make. So I think that's kind of the issue. And unfortunately for the Ravens in this one, outside of you take away your first 2 drives where you go up 9-0, which partially, of course, there that instead of getting 10-0 on the Eagles, you get 9-0 because he misses the extra point there. Take away those drives. The only drives that did anything resulted in him missing field goals. So, I mean, outside of those 4 drives there, Ravens just didn't have much of anything on offense for most of this game. And it's unfortunate because you played such good defense on the first, 3-4 drives against the Eagles, where the Eagles weren't doing anything. I mean, they kept passing at Jalen Hurts. It took him like 5-6 tries to actually complete a pass there. I mean, they really weren't running. I mean, they got stuck. They got behind the sticks. Of course, you can throw incomplete first and second down. What's your choice on third down, right? So, got behind the sticks there. And the Ravens defense plus the Ravens offense, I mean, it was looking like the Eagles were going to get dominated in this one. And then pretty much a complete flip of the script. Eagles, they finally start to score. They move the ball. This is pretty much all Saquon Barkley. I mean, Jalen had some good plays, but I mean, this one, they weren't asking him to do too much in comparison to Saquon. I mean, later in this game, this really was Saquon's game. And we kind of came into it figuring, this is going to be Derrick Henry versus Saquon. And Derrick Henry, like you mentioned, he couldn't really get too much going overall. And it's not as if they completely abandoned the run either. There's a lot of times we talk about the season where they lose and, he barely gets the ball. I mean, he had 19 rushes and, up until the end of the game where it was 24-12, like you mentioned, it was still close enough where you could run the ball, and they did. It just wasn't working. So I think this one says a lot about the Eagles' defense. Over that win streak that they've had, haven't played the best opponents. Um, Obviously, you're expecting that Ravens offense to come out and at least do better than a lot of the teams that they've played, and they didn't. And it's kind of like the Steelers game. It's like I understand that the Steelers defense is great, but I'm thinking, with this Ravens offense this year, they'll be able to do something. They didn't. So I think it is a little bit of a cause for concern. I think we kind of forget with how well the Ravens have played over the last, month and a half. They already have 5 losses. So, I mentioned they're a game behind the Steelers. I mean, really, I guess it's a game and a half because they have 2 more losses and they have 1 less win. So, right now you're not in panic zone or anything. You're obviously going to make the playoffs, but I do have to wonder at what point do these poor performances on offense, even when your defense tries to do its best, when they kind of catch up to you, when they become a concern.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the Eagles, everyone's gonna, I think, make the joke that this is now Daniel Jones is no longer the only NFC quarterback to beat Lamar Jackson. But aside from just like you lose your NFC curse here, um, it's just a tough loss. Offense can't get it together. And one thing we've known all season is like the defense has been a problem, but they weren't at the beginning of this game. The Ravens come out strong on defense, able to hold the Eagles down for a while, and they've got a 9-0 lead for a lot of it. Philly starts to fight back. It's 14-9, then it's 14-12. It'll stay that way for a long time. Um, and so, truthfully, I mean, all things considered, I'd say the Ravens defense comes up pretty big here, and the offense is not able to get over that Eagles defense. And I think that's a big issue, one that we haven't really even like fully, I think, put a lot of thought to, because even in a lot of these Ravens losses, it's been with the offense caught fire here or caught fire in the right places and looked really good, but the defense let too much happen. This one, they kind of reversed the script a little bit. Defense showed up pretty big. Offense couldn't quite get it rolling, and they come up with a big loss here. Again, they're probably going to be a guarantee for the playoffs. It doesn't look like they're going to lose that by any means. I think they're playing pretty well here, but you end up staying behind Pittsburgh. You got a loss to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh continues to roll. They just rolled through the whole. Actually, no, they did not roll through the whole division. They lost to the Browns. Sorry, but they just they had a pretty good little run through the division, and now you're kind of in this weird 1.5 game spot behind them, and it's a different problem than you've had. And so yeah, it's not time to panic. You're not going to miss the playoffs, but you do have to think like if we make it when we get in the playoffs, we have to be able to play good enough football to advance to the Super Bowl and then win it. And right now, as much as I like this Ravens team, as much as I think that they're a likable team, they're fun to watch. Sometimes it can be a little painful to watch, and sometimes it can really make me think like these guys aren't really built to win a Super Bowl if their defense plays this bad, or in this case, if their offense gets this stalled out. And that is kind of usually what happens for the Ravens. I feel like in the past, when you get to these playoff games, they turn away from what works for them, and next thing you know, they're not able to score on offense, despite the fact that they've been scoring 30 to 40 points per game all regular season. So this is a little bit of a scary early sign of a Ravens playoff formula that has been pretty rough in the past. So this will be a tough one. They dropped their second game at home here. Not super amazing for the Ravens, but again, not like panic time, but it is start. It's time to start thinking about how can we retool this team and be sure that we're prepared for playoff intensity.